I turned 83 this year. At my last checkup, my doctor looked at my file, then at me, and said, "You're doing better than most men your age." He didn't say extraordinary, he said consistent. And I think that's the difference. I'm not stronger than other men. I'm not lucky. I just made a quiet decision a few years ago. I decided I wouldn't age passively. Aging is inevitable. But decline, at least in part, is negotiable. And that negotiation begins before breakfast. People assume this is about exercise, or supplements, or some secret routine. It isn't. Health is the result. Morning is the leverage. A few years ago, I started noticing small things, not dramatic ones. It took longer to get out of a chair. My knees felt stiff before noon. Some afternoons I sat longer than I meant to. Nothing alarming, just gradual. But gradual is how most decline begins. There was a period when I would wake up already bracing. Alarm goes off. Swing the legs over. Push up quickly. Move through the day on momentum. It felt efficient, but it wasn't intentional. And when your mornings begin rushed, the rest of the day follows that tone. So I made one adjustment. Not a reinvention, an adjustment. I stopped rushing the first hour. Now when I wake up, I sit at the edge of the bed before standing. Feet on the floor, back upright. I let my body settle before asking it to carry me. That small pause changed more than I expected. I stand slower, not because I'm fragile, because I want control over the movement. I make the bed every morning, not as discipline, as signal. The day has begun. I open a window before turning on the news. I step outside for a few minutes of morning air, not to prove endurance, just to stay connected to something bigger than the room. None of this is dramatic. None of it is impressive. But it changes the tone of the day. Aging isn't loud. It's incremental. So the correction doesn't need to be loud either. It just needs to be consistent. And consistency, at 83, matters more than intensity. It wasn't one big event. It was a collection of small ones. A missed step on the stairs, a moment of dizziness in the kitchen, a chair that felt lower than it used to. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make my daughter watch me more closely. She started asking questions differently. "Are you sleeping okay? Are your knees bothering you again? Have you thought about maybe having someone check in more often?" One afternoon, I took longer than usual to get up from the couch. She reached out her hand automatically. I didn't need it. But I noticed something in her face, concern and calculation. Later that evening, she mentioned a place nearby. "Just to look," she said. "They have good reviews." She meant assisted living. She wasn't trying to move me out. She was trying to protect me, and I understood that. But something in me tightened. Not pride, responsibility. I went to bed that night thinking about what had changed. The truth was simple. I had become less deliberate. I sat longer. I moved less in the mornings. I let stiffness decide my pace. I wasn't incapacitated, but I was drifting. The idea of assisted living didn't scare me because of the place itself. It scared me because it felt like an outcome I hadn't actively resisted. Not through denial, through passivity. The next morning I struggled with my socks. It took longer than it should have. I sat there and realized, if I continue like this, someone else will make decisions for me. Not out of control, out of care, and I couldn't blame them. That was the turning point. Not dramatic, not emotional, just clear. If I wanted to stay in this house, I had to become more intentional again. Not younger, not stronger, more attentive. That was the moment I understood. Independence doesn't disappear suddenly. It fades quietly when you stop participating. And I wasn't ready to fade. I didn't overhaul my life. I didn't sign up for a program. I didn't make a promise to become someone new. I changed 1 hour, the first hour of the day. That was all I could control without pretending. Before, my mornings were automatic. Alarm, swing the legs out of bed, stand too quickly, head to the bathroom half aware. There was nothing wrong with it. But there was no intention in it either. And when you remove intention from movement, you begin to move less well. So I slowed it down. Not dramatically, just enough to feel the difference. Now when I wake up, I don't stand immediately. I sit at the edge of the bed, feet on the floor, back straight, not stiff, just aligned. I stay there for a moment, long enough to notice how my body feels. Is there tightness in the hips? Are the knees stiff today? Is the lower back asking for patience? That pause is important. It reminds me that I am not separate from this body. I am responsible for it. When I stand deliberately. I don't push off the mattress with force. I lean forward slightly, engage my legs, and rise under control. There's something steadying about that. It tells the body, we're doing this together. In the bathroom, I don't lean heavily on the counter anymore. I brush my teeth standing upright. It seems small, but posture, especially at this age, determines more than people think. Shoulders forward becomes breath shallow. Breath shallow becomes fatigue earlier. Fatigue earlier becomes less movement later. It's all connected. After washing my face, I return to the bedroom and make the bed. Every morning. Not because anyone sees it. Because I do. The sheets pulled smooth, pillows straightened. It's not military precision. It's acknowledgement. The day has begun, and I am participating in it. There was a time when I would leave it undone. I'll fix it later, I'd say. Later sometimes never came, and that subtle neglect carried into other areas. When small things slide, larger things follow quietly. After the bed is made, I open the window, even in colder months. Just enough to let in morning air. Fresh air does something to the lungs. It widens them. It reminds you that the world exists beyond your walls. I stand there for a minute or two, not exercising, just standing tall, weight evenly distributed, feet grounded. Sometimes I rotate my shoulders gently. Sometimes I bend the knees slightly, feeling the joints wake up. Not stretches, just signals. I don't force range of motion. I encourage it. The difference matters. Force creates resistance. Encouragement creates cooperation. Then I walk into the kitchen. Slowly, but not sluggishly. I notice how I step. Heel, then toe. Balanced. There was a period when I shuffled more than I realized. It wasn't intentional. It was convenience. But shuffling becomes habit, and habits become identity if you're not careful. While the coffee brews, I stand instead of sitting immediately. I rest my hands lightly on the counter, spine long. It's a quiet check-in. Can I support my own weight comfortably? Can I maintain balance without leaning? If the answer is yes, I've already won something that day. When I finally sit with my coffee, it feels earned. Not because I exerted myself, because I was present. That's the word. Present. Mornings used to feel like something to get through. Now they feel like something to shape. And shaping 1 hour changes the tone of the next 10. I don't do cold plunges. I don't run miles. I don't follow complicated regimens. I simply refuse to start the day carelessly. Carelessness accumulates. So does attentiveness. Over time, I notice the difference. Getting out of chairs became smoother, my balance steadier. The stiffness in my knees still exists, but it doesn't dominate. More importantly, my confidence returned. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from knowing you are not neglecting yourself. Assisted living stopped being a looming suggestion. My daughter noticed. She stopped watching me so closely. Not because I convinced her with words, because my movements spoke differently. At 83, strength is not about lifting more. It's about maintaining what you have. It's about preventing erosion. 1 careless hour every morning can begin decline. 1 intentional hour can slow it. That's what I learned. I didn't become younger. I became deliberate. And deliberate living, even in small doses, has a way of compounding. Not dramatically, steadily. And steady is enough. There's something I've come to understand at 83. Aging is not the same as decaying. They look similar from the outside. Slower steps, more careful movements, earlier nights. But internally, they are very different. Aging is natural. It's the body adjusting to time. Decaying begins when you stop adjusting with it. I've seen men my age who decided quietly that their active years were behind them. They didn't say it out loud. They just stopped doing certain things. Stopped walking as far. Stopped bending to pick things up. Stopped trying to stand without assistance. not because they couldn't, because it felt easier not to. And ease, if you choose it too often, becomes decline. It doesn't arrive dramatically. It settles. First you lean more than you need to. Then you sit longer than you should. Then you avoid stairs entirely. Eventually your world shrinks to match your hesitation. That's decay. Aging, on the other hand, requires adaptation. You move differently. You recover more slowly. You listen more carefully to your limits. But you still move. You still participate. You still correct yourself when you notice posture slipping or balance shifting. The body responds to use, not punishment, not intensity. Use. I don't try to prove anything anymore. I'm not competing with younger men. I'm not chasing strength I had at 40. I'm preserving capability at 83. There's dignity in that. The difference between aging and decaying is subtle. It's not about heroics. It's about whether you continue to show up for your own life. Every morning, when I sit before I stand, when I straighten my back, when I step outside instead of collapsing into a chair, I'm choosing aging, not decay. It's a small distinction, but at this stage of life, small distinctions determine everything. I don't pretend I have endless time. At 83, you become aware of the calendar in a different way, not fearfully, just honestly. There are friends I've buried, conversations that won't happen again, rooms that feel quieter than they used to. That's aging, and I accept it. What I don't accept is fading before I must. There's a quiet temptation at this stage of life to step back too far, to let others take over small tasks, to excuse inactivity as inevitability. Some of that is necessary, but not all of it. I don't wake up trying to fight time. I wake up trying to meet it upright. If my legs still carry me, I'll use them. If my hands still grip, I'll trust them. If my breath still fills my lungs, I'll step outside and feel the air. I don't fear aging. It's part of the agreement. What I fear is giving up before I have to. So I won't. Not loudly, not dramatically, just consistently. And at 83, that consistency has been enough.